A Japanese automaker, on the verge of bankruptcy, visited the world's largest factory. There, it discovered that its massive size was a fatal weakness. Today, that revelation keeps Toyota as the undisputed king of the industry. Welcome to Plexo. Summer of 1950. The River Rouge complex in Dearborn, Michigan. AG Toyota walked through the immense steel walkways of Ford. The noise of the presses was deafening. Below, thousands of workers assembled vehicles at a frantic pace, devouring iron and glass. Ford built 8,000 cars every day. Toyota, in its 13-year history, had barely managed to build about 2,500 passenger cars, though counting all vehicles, including trucks, the total exceeded 130,000 units by 1950. The difference in scale was humiliating. American executives proudly showed off their facilities, convinced the Japanese engineer would be crushed by Western superiority. But Toyota didn't see perfection, he saw massive waste. He observed mountains of parts rusting in backyards, waiting months to be used. He saw idle workers while machines broke down, and assembly lines that never stopped, even if the cars had defects. Ford's system was based on non-stop production, pushing metal forward regardless of actual demand. Toyota realized that copying this model in a war-ravaged Japan would be a fatal mistake. His country had no space, resources, or capital to store massive inventories. If Toyota wanted to survive, it would have to invent a method that did the exact opposite of Ford. The Detroit giant had just handed him the keys to its own ruin, without even knowing it. Before AG Toyota could revolutionize production, his company had to survive its darkest hour. June 5, 1950. An unheated office in the city of Kuromo. Kiichiro Toyota, the company's founder, signed his own resignation letter after a strike, months after negotiating a bank bailout in December 1949. The automaker was technically bankrupt. A brutal inflation crisis in Japan had destroyed consumer credit, leaving the company with no cash to pay wages. Unions erupted in bitter strikes that paralyzed factories. To avoid total collapse, a consortium of 24 banks, coordinated by the Bank of Japan, injected an emergency bailout of 188 million yen. The money came with drastic conditions, mass layoffs and a complete restructuring. Survival hung by a very thin thread. That's when Taichi Ono, an engineer with a fierce gaze and a severe mustache, was tasked with transforming the plant. Workers called him behind his back, Mr. Mustache. Ono understood that every part stored on a shelf represented tied-up capital. In a company with no liquidity, excessive inventory wasn't a tactical advantage, it was a noose around the neck. Under his command, the factory floor became a laboratory of extreme efficiency. He eliminated intermediate warehouses. Day by day, he forced workers to make only what was needed. Surplus parts, once seen as safety, became public enemy number one. The traditional system of pushing production was dead. From that moment on, demand would set the pace. And nobody in Detroit was watching. Toyota's big intellectual leap didn't happen among gears and pistons. It happened in a grocery aisle. The year was 1956. Taichi Ono had traveled to the United States to study American industry. But he got hypnotized watching a shopper. She stood in front of a shelf of canned goods. She picked up 2 cans of soup. A few minutes later, a stocker replaced exactly those 2 cans. Not one more, not one less. To a Westerner, this was just retail. To Ono, it was an industrial revelation. The supermarket didn't pile thousands of cans in the aisles, waiting for someone to buy them. The customer took what she needed, and the store restocked only what was consumed. It was a pull system, driven by real demand, not theoretical projections. Ono returned to Japan and applied this logic to car manufacturing. He created the Kanban system, using cardboard cards as visual signals. A worker on the assembly line would take a steering wheel from a container. The empty card traveled back to the previous station, signaling them to make exactly one new steering wheel. He also gave unheard of power to the workers on the floor. He installed a rope above the assembly line, called the andon cord. If an operator spotted a loose bolt or a defective part, they were supposed to pull that cord and stop the entire factory immediately. Stopping production to fix a problem at its root was better than assembling hundreds of defective cars at full speed. Ford would never have tolerated that kind of silence on its lines. Toyota turned it into doctrine. The real battlefield between these two production models was revealed by a global crisis. October 1973. The ports of California, along with Detroit's massive parking lots, offered a brutal contrast. The Arab oil embargo had sent fuel prices through the roof, changing consumer tastes overnight. In the United States, the big three automakers in Detroit panicked. Their rigid mass production system couldn't slow down quickly. Factories kept churning out heavy vehicles, with giant engines that nobody could afford. Thousands of Ford and Chevrolet cars sat abandoned on asphalt lots, gathering dust in the sun, because dealers refused to take them. The massive inventory that had once been their greatest pride turned into a lead anchor, sinking their balance sheets. Meanwhile, Toyota rode out the storm with an agility no analyst had predicted. Thanks to its just-in-time manufacturing philosophy, they had no warehouses full of obsolete cars. Their assembly lines adapted within days. They started producing only compact, efficient models like the Toyota Corolla. The silent war in the auto industry was decided in that exact moment. American consumers, desperate to save gas, bought Japanese cars in droves. Toyota proved something vital. True industrial strength wasn't about the size of your facilities. It was about speed of response. Detroit had spent decades building factories designed to dominate a predictable world. Japan built an ecosystem that could survive a chaotic one. The student had come to collect the debt. The impact of this revolution went far beyond metal and asphalt. Year 2026. A software development office in Silicon Valley. A group of programmers moves digital cards on a screen, dragging tasks from one column to another. They're using virtual Kanban boards to manage their code. The same principle Taichi Ono designed with cardboard scraps in Japan now organizes the work of the world's most advanced tech companies. The Toyota production system was rebranded in the West as lean manufacturing, and its principles infiltrated every sector of the modern economy. From hospitals optimizing emergency patient flow to logistics giants delivering millions of packages in hours. Without firing a single shot, the idea of continuous waste elimination conquered the business world. The historical irony is absolute. Decades after the first visit by AG Toyota to Michigan, Ford and the rest of the US automakers had to hire consultants. They needed to learn how to build cars the Japanese way. To avoid outright bankruptcy, they had to dismantle their massive inventories. And they had to adopt the philosophy of their former apprentices. The student not only surpassed the master, but rewrote the rules of the game forever. Industrial supremacy no longer belongs to the one with the biggest furnaces, but to the one who makes the fewest mistakes. Toyota didn't beat Ford by building more cars. It proved that true industrial power lies not in scale, but in the ability to stop the machine before multiplying the error.